Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sanko for the second Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. And if you guys are not listening to him and Blake Silverman on the DBB YouTube channel, you should. That's the pin down over there. But today, guys, we're joined by our favorite guest. Let's just go ahead and say it. We love Laz. We love some of the other people we have. We love Sam. But Keith Smith is our favorite guest, Omari. Straight up, friend of the pod. I would like to consider Keith a friend outside of this world of content creation. I've got to know him very well. We work on some things together. Keith, what's Spot Track? If you guys aren't using that, you make sure you're over there. The Front Office Show, the Basketball Bulletin, following on Twitter, all of this stuff. Keith, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, man. Things are finally slowed down a little bit, right? It feels like the NBA offseason now just doesn't stop. It seems like there's always now destined to be a handful of players that it's going to drag all summer long into it, but things have slowed down, which is a great time to get caught up on stuff and start prepping for next year because it's never that far away.
All right, real quick. Hold on, Omari. Keith, you sent out 10 tweets this morning, and I don't know what half of them were saying. So what were you watching this morning? What was going on? What was I missing?
Yeah, Leeds United. That's my soccer team that I support. They're in the second level of English soccer, and it's called the Championship. They went down last year. They lost in the playoff to get promoted back to the Premier League. Promotion and relegation is craziest thing that American sports fans that don't follow soccer don't really get and understand. But that's how it works. If you're one of the worst teams, you go down. If you're one of the better teams, you go up. They lost. And this year, they're one of the favorites. They were playing a newly promoted team from the third division to the second division, and they tied, and they should have won. So it wasn't a great thing. But Brendan Aronson, an American who plays for Leeds, he scored the tying goal in stoppage time. So I was pretty excited about that. And he probably should have had a game winner a minute or two later, but he pulled it just wide. But that's what it was all about. It was all about Leeds. So you see early morning tweets from me, especially on the weekends, it's always going to be soccer related.
I only understand this a little bit because of Ted Lasso. Me and the wife got into Ted Lasso, and
there you go.
Sorry, Omari. I hijacked the beginning of the pod here.
I feel like there is way more crossover and fandom between NBA and soccer than football and football, if that makes sense, right? I don't know. I know so many NBA people who follow soccer. I don't. I need to get into it. But where does that come from? What got you into soccer initially, Keith?
Yeah, I played soccer growing up.
Okay.
My family was big into soccer. My sister was a Division I college soccer player growing up. So I was nowhere near as good as she was, but I played. I've always loved the game. And then during the pandemic, when it was I've watched everything else, I need sports. There's no sports to watch. I watched the Leeds documentary on Amazon Prime, which was a multi-season documentary about them trying to go up. Just brief background, Leeds was one of the powers in the top level for years. Then through a series of mismanagements, they went down. Then they spent almost 20 years, or might have been 20 years, in the second level. So they did this incredible documentary on Amazon Prime about them trying to get back up to the Premier League. And I just fell in love with the players and the city and everything. So they kind of became my team that I'm rooting for. And now I'm fully locked in and watching second division, English soccer games on Saturday mornings and all that. But it's great. It works out really well with the NBA because when it gets started, there's no NBA going on. And then it's on in the mornings for the most part, or at worst, in the early afternoon. So it doesn't really overlap. And for me, I'll take sports on the TV over anything all day long. So it's just great on those weekend mornings when we're not off at a soccer game ourselves, which is more often than not, it feels like.
So, yeah, I don't want to put your family business out there, but your daughter's quite the soccer player in her own right as well, a big-time goalkeeper down there. I know I've talked to you about this. I know you've talked about it on the pod, so it's not something that's secretive, but, I just wanted to make sure we gave your daughter a shout-out as well for her talents and skill level.
I appreciate that. Yeah, she's a pretty good little goalkeeper. She started high school this week, which is, I don't know how that happened. I swear she was 5 years old a week ago, but now she's starting high school. But yeah, she's a really good player. She's far better athlete than her dad ever was, and that's great. And she loves it. So it's a lot of fun, and we're my wife and I are relishing every moment of it because it goes by way too quickly.
Okay.
So absolutely.
Omari, are we going to get into the lawn care real quick?
We are. Yeah, we are. So Keith, like you and Bryce are like, from my vantage point, very similar. You both have wives, both have kids, and you are both homeowners. So I have to ask you this question as well. Where are you as far as lawn care? Like I know, like of course people everybody has to cut their own grass. Do you enjoy it? Is it like a meditative thing for you, or is it more like a chore? Like where do you fall on this scale?
Sure. So I love cutting the grass. I don't like all of the rest of it. I don't like the trimming the bushes, all that other stuff. That stuff I could completely do without. But I love cutting grass because it's that immediate gratification of long, and now it's not, and now it didn't look good, and now it does look good. I don't mind doing the trimming and the edging, but I will say this: this is where I probably fall right in the middle of you two guys. Is I like when all the soccer stuff really took off for us, I had to give up cutting our own grass. So we have a guy who does it in the neighborhood. He's like semi-retired, and this is like what his job is now. So we have him do it because I just don't have time on the weekends. And down here, it's like a 3-hour chore twice a week to do it because that's how often you cut the grass down here sometimes when it rains a lot. So it gets to be a lot. And I'm like, I don't have time for that anymore. So, but I do love it. And there are times like just the other day, we just got cut. And then we had a really good rainstorm. And I just was looking up and I'm like,
that's perfect.
Wow, it's good, right?
That's perfect.
It feels so good.
Yeah. Listen, I don't understand how you don't get the satisfaction.
All right. I have an important question for both of you. Have either of you ever shoveled snow?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I grew up in Massachusetts.
That's a workout for me. Like I don't love the snow. I like it because then it gives my kids something to do on a cold day instead of just being inside because it's cold. If there's snow, they'll go play in it. But I see the snow in the driveway or on the back patio, and that's like, in my mind, hey, there's a workout. And to Keith's point, this is what it is. And I think this is my farming background, because whenever I drive a tractor and till a field, essentially, I love the satisfaction of, look at that weedy field out there, and then you get done and it's clean and looks nice. I hate when I can't finish it all in one day, or my dad comes and finishes. Like, no, I want to finish it. So it's the same thing with the snow. But where were you going with the snow removal?
I was just going to say, Keith, I forgot the Boston side, so I'm going to ask that question. So forgive me, because I'm no.
You're the first person to ever forget that.
Keith, have you ever shoveled snow? He's from Boston. The first he shoveled snow. It's okay. I don't like outside chores. I'll just put
I don't like shoveling snow. Like that.
I don't like
forget.
Yeah.
I don't like the cold anymore, period. Like I've been living in either Florida, or we lived briefly for about 1.5 years in Southern California. That time, like I've lived there now, those two places combined, almost actually longer than I lived in Massachusetts. And I'm like, I go home, and if it's past like the very beginning of October, I'm like, why do people do this? Like, why would you willingly choose to live where it is gray and cold and gross for, half the year or more? Like, trust me, I love home. I love everything about it. But man, those January days when I wake up and I have to call my parents, I'm like, yeah, it was a little warm today. It hit like 85, and they're like, it's 6 here. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, that's something.
Okay, yeah. we got to talk Pistons today. We could have a blast just talking with Keith. This is why he's the best, and everybody said it. YouTube user, my favorite guest, Matthews from Brazil, the great Keith.
I appreciate it.
The joke there is, Keith, Omari didn't realize Brazil was straight south of America, essentially, and so the time zone confuses Omari a little bit. It's not fair to Omari. Omari doesn't even know what day it is. Omari doesn't know what day it is ever.
Yeah,
we have Mohammed from Italy. So yes, thank you guys all for tuning in. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, rate, review, all of that stuff. We are back over on Twitter now. The Free Press account has Twitter Blue or whatever it's called. So we can stream live over there if you're watching on Facebook. Thank you for that. Let's talk Pistons. Keith, I want to start here. We got a lot of different things we can discuss. Let's start with the draft. You were super into the draft this year. You were crushing it. You and I have already talked about the 2025 draft. We've been comparing, hey, how many guys do we have and all of that. What did you think about Ron Holland in general? What did you think about Ron Holland to the Pistons? Qualms with that? Should they have traded back? Was there a better option there? Your thoughts just on Ron Holland, then we'll get to Bobbi, Klintman, and some of the other guys.
I was not as high on Ron Holland as some folks coming into the draft because I didn't see enough from him as far as what I wanted to see. But he was a player, I think we've probably talked about this, you and I, Bryce. I had to recalibrate that entire G League Ignite team because it was such a messy situation with those guys this year. It wasn't like the previous editions of the Ignite. They didn't have the kind of 5 or 6 veteran NBA guys. They had those guys, but those guys weren't the same level to help them along. In there, you could tell with this year's team, it was a lot of dudes playing for themselves to try to boost their draft stock, which in part, along with NIL and a bunch of other stuff, is why the Ignite's gone. It doesn't exist. But I didn't like his efficiency at all. Like, he did not shoot well with the Ignite. I was really worried about that because if you're a wing that can't shoot well, you better be elite at other stuff. And I just didn't know if he was. When I started to recalibrate it a little bit and take into account, man, he didn't have a point guard to set him up. He had to do everything himself. The other guys he was playing with weren't exactly trying to set him up. I started to like him a lot more. I know some people had him as like a top 3 prospect in the draft. I had him a little lower, but not out of range. We talk about all the time, kind of put guys into tiers. And I was in the tier, he was drafted in the tier I had him. And once you're in the tier, to me, a lot of that becomes, it's a matter of personal preference. And I think for the Pistons, the one spot, right, they have the ball handler in Cade Cunningham. They have the centers in Jalen Duren. They needed for me to continue to beef up the wings because if you're going to win, you need multiple really good wings. And I like Thompson a lot as a prospect, but they needed somebody who could also score. So I'm kind of there with Ron Holland now for the Pistons. And then in Summer League, despite, again, didn't shoot it real well, I liked a lot of what I saw in Summer League. So I'm even higher on the 5th than I was before.
If just looking at that 5th spot and who was there, Keith, and, of course, the Pistons could have went with a more certain prospect like a Klintman or something along those lines. Just how do you evaluate the value there at 5, given that I think most people would agree it's more of an upside swing than getting somebody that would be able to contribute. But in this draft, it's like, where do you fall as far as that?
Yeah, when you look at the guys who went behind him, the only guys I would have probably considered for the Pistons within that tier group of players would have been Cody Williams or Matas Buzelis. I liked both of those guys. I know Buzelis was like a very popular mock draft pick to Detroit, and I like him, but he had a lot of the same issues as Holland did with that messy G League Ignite team. And then I liked Cody Williams a lot more than I think by the end of the season, a lot of people did. I gave a lot of credence to that Colorado team and a lot of mouths to feed. And I thought he did a good job just playing a role for them. And then his season ended very messy with an ankle injury after I think he got his nose broken too, or he had some kind of facial injury. And it was just a mess for him at the end of the year. But I was very high on him coming in. But yeah, so definitely an upside swing with Holland. And I'm okay with that because I think if you're the Pistons, you now have I'm struggling to call Cade Cunningham still a prospect because we're going into year 4, but you have your developmental young guys. So I'm okay with saying, all right, let's really, not fully swing for the fences, but let's put a little extra into this swing to try to bring in one more guy who we feel like can really, maybe if he fits, it can really lift us to a level where versus maybe somebody else would have been a little bit of a safer pick. It might have been there, but maybe not as much upside. So I'm okay with taking a chance on a guy like Holland.
When you talk about Holland's upside, the name that everybody's brought up, I think Trajan has even said it, is Jaylen Brown. Like that's the archetype, kind of the role comp. I'm not saying they're one-to-one players. You've watched every second of Jaylen Brown's career, and it did start off, not with a boom, right? It didn't start off bad, but it's not like he came in averaging 20 points a night. What clicked for Jaylen Brown throughout his career? Where were the progressions that allowed him to get to the level he is at now that maybe Pistons fans can watch for in a Ron Holland and expect, what were the growing pains early in his career that he's now better at, since that is kind of the comp people like to use?
Yeah, when Jaylen Brown came in, it was all about athleticism for him. Everything he wanted to do was fast and strong. And he would run himself into charges in the open court. He would just head down to the basket with no plan beyond I'm getting to the rim. And that was it. Then you started to see, which is one of my favorite things when you dial in and watch a team and a player every single game. I'll never forget it. It was in year 2, early in year 2. We were still in October. I think maybe it was November, but they threw him the ball in the break and he took that first really hard dribble and the defender was right in front of him. Like he's just going to run him over for a charge. And then he did the little hesitation, slow up dribble and then beat the guy off the bounce after that. And I was like, whoa, like that's awesome, right? That's when you're like, he's figuring stuff out. And then from there, it's just been jump, 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 jump. Because I know people still make fun of the whole left hand stuff and all that. I get it, but he has improved his ball handling a considerable amount. He came in a better shooter than I thought he was going to be. And he's really improved as a shooter, but a shooter in all kinds of ways now because he can spot up, he can catch and shoot on the move. He can create his own shots off the dribble. He does a really nice job with his all-around game that way. Then his playmaking is taking a big leap. And then what I think has been probably the biggest thing is as he's improved his strength and his understanding of the game, he's really taken on more defensive responsibilities too, where it used to be kind of like, all right, well, he's big, he's long, he's quick, throw him on another wing. Now he can defend 4s and really do pretty well. And even some of the smaller 5s. That's kind of the secret sauce with him and Tatum is Boston can switch them on to most 5s and feel pretty good about it. Not Embiid, not Jokic, but those guys they're in a class all their own. But most other 5s, you're like, yeah, you're fine. To the point where Tatum played the 5 most of the time with Porzingis out because they wanted to use Horford in slightly different ways defensively. So that was, but to go back to Jaylen Brown and Ron Holland, I can see some of the similarities there. And for Holland, there's going to be games where he probably looks really good. And then there's going to be other games where it's like, oh no, like this is a mess. But you got to it's going to be growing pains for him. You're going to have to figure it out. And I hope they're smart enough to really spot him minutes in places where he can be really successful. If you're playing a team, I always throw you, this is my go-to. You're playing Tuesday night in Charlotte and you happen to be, up big. Well, let him run. Let him go. Let him get that confidence and feel good about it. If you're in a game against Boston and it's not going so well for him, you don't need to run him into the ground and destroy his confidence in year 1. So that's going to be the balance. That's going to be what the coaching staff and the front office are going to have to figure out together in tandem.
Real quick, Omari, guys, if you're dropping or girls, if you're dropping comments and questions, we will get to those at the end if we have time, or if not, we have a mailbag episode coming up and we'll get into those in a couple weeks. So go ahead and get your questions in. If you have them, we are starring them. We're keeping track of them. If we have time, we'll get to them. If not, we'll answer them later on. Yes, Matthew, one day come watch. Yeah, come to Detroit. We'll watch a game. Well, I'll meet you in Detroit. Obviously, I'm not there already. And then, find Keith in Florida. All right. Sorry, Omari. I just wanted to get that in real quick before you ask your question.
Nope. All good. Keith, we can dive into Bobbi Klintman real quick here.
Yeah.
I guess one, going into the draft, just how did you view him as a prospect, and how would you like the value for the Pistons at 37?
Yeah, I love the value. I had him as a late first rounder. I thought he was going to be really, really good. I liked what he had done at Wake Forest prior to leaving to go play the year in Australia. They did. Bryce knows prior to this past year, I don't watch a lot of college basketball because I don't have time. Amari, like when you're in the NBA, grind, you're like, that's it. You just don't have time to spend a lot of time. But this year I really made time and effort. But what I did see 2 years ago, I watched Boston College games and I found
Quentin Post.
That's my guy. But he really popped spot there. And I felt, wow, this is good. And then I was very curious to see he's leaving Wake Forest to go pro in Australia, but he really played well over there. And I think they get a great value with him. And those are the kind of contracts, as the team starts getting more expensive, those are the kind of winning contracts you have to have. He can come in and give them 15 to 20 minutes a night off the bench eventually. I'm not saying this year, but eventually for a couple $1,000,000, that's great. Now eventually he'll price out of that and he'll become more expensive, but for the interim time, as the team starts to grow and starts to improve, you already see it, right? They extended Cade Cunningham. Next up, you'll have Duren and then maybe Ivy, and we'll see where all that goes. You got to have guys like Klintman on those really team-friendly deals if they can play. If they can't play, it's whatever because it's basically a minimum. But yeah, I'm pretty high on him. He can do a lot of different stuff. And I know not everybody loves the Tobias Harris signing and all that, but I think Klintman's in a great spot to play behind Harris and Fontecchio to really kind of learn the NBA game and start to figure things out for himself. I think he's going to be a pretty good player.
Real quick before we go to break, Mark Murray says, "What's up, Bryce?" Mark Murray went to JUCO with me. This is like almost 20 years ago. So this tells you guys but he was there. He was a huge fan of the basketball team. Mark, I haven't seen him in person, quite honestly, since I left junior college, but this is on Facebook now, and so he must be tuned in. So Mark, what's up? I hope you're doing well. We're going to go to a short break. When we come back, we're going to ask Keith about the Cade Cunningham extension. He mentioned Tobias Harris. I want to see what his thoughts are on some of the floor spacing Trajan Langdon added, if maybe that helps see a better vision for this team. We'll get into all of that after this short break.
All right, Keith, we're going to get into segment 2. Obviously, the Pistons were probably one of the busier teams this offseason, but we'll lead off with Cade Cunningham's extension, which, I think coming into the summer, a lot of people expected would get done eventually, even with the front office change. But, just looking at the value of that contract, looking at what he did last season and where he could go, how do you like the value and what do you expect from Cade from this point on?
Yeah, it went exactly as I expected, and I have no issue with it. I thought this was one where you don't mess around. I get it. Year 2 was a mess for Cade Cunningham, basically a lost season. But I thought last year he showed real improvement as a player in a number of phases of the game. And I thought, I think we've even talked about it here on your show. I was very disappointed with the first half of the year for the Pistons in general. I didn't like the rotations, especially the Jaden Ivey stuff. Thought they did Cunningham a disservice putting him out. There were not a lot of spacing around him. I thought in the second half of the year, when things kind of normalized for them a lot more, I thought you really saw, all right, this is what this guy can be with the right kind of floor spacing around him. He's really tough to guard. Let's see if he turns some of those mid-range fallaways into drives to the rim, or I'd even like to see it just take the immediate pull-up. I don't want anybody to go crazy and get angry at me with this, but I think what he can really be is like a amped-up version of Evan Turner. That's who he reminds me of a lot with the size, the playmaking ability in the spot, kind of gets to his spots with ease. Right now, it's just he settles a little bit for me where it is, let me try to make a move. I didn't get by him. All right, I'm going to take this fall away. Here, we're either get to your spot and just take the jump shot or get downhill on guys. When I had a chance to see a little bit of the highlight stuff we've seen from the USA stuff, he looked a little bigger and stronger, which is good. So that'll be good too. So yeah, I'm excited for him. I can't wait to see, what he comes in looking like this year. And I think that contract is one where you really, you almost have to do that because otherwise, what are your options, right? Hey, play out the year and then we'll see.
Yeah.
All you're going to do is make him mad, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
like, what's the point of that? Like, if you end up in the same place, all you do is anger him for a year. And it's not like we got to motivate this guy to be good to put a chip on his shoulder. Like we've seen that go wrong. So I think they did a good job with that. And also the cap sheet can obviously afford it. They don't have any long-term money locked in beyond his contract. So they're fine. Fine contract, fine value. And I think he'll return the value on that tenfold.
Yeah, I think no matter what, Cade is the guy right now in the organization. You had to give him the money. Like you said, you don't want to make him mad. And I guess 2 years from now, if you feel like you have to trade him, like they need to go in another direction, I feel like that contract's not bad to go to another team and be the second player on that team if necessary. I don't foresee that playing out, but I don't think it's detrimental at all. Let's talk about the guys they brought in. So let's start with Tobias Harris. You mentioned that. I think that's the one that gets the most discussion because of the contract, because of Tobias's, quote unquote shortcomings, at least in this last year's playoffs. One thing I like to highlight with Tobias is he's played 70 plus games the last 5 years. He plays 30 plus minutes a game. He plays the position that the Detroit Pistons don't really have, like the archetype of a real 4-man. I think this is fine, right? Is it an overpay? Sure, maybe who were they bidding against? I get it. I understand all of that. Maybe you can shed a little more light on that. But they have extra cap space right now. So what else were they going to do if, they only paid him 15 million instead of 26? So I'm fine with it. Where do you land on the value of the contract and the value of a Tobias Harris on this team?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So my first thought is I don't mind the signing at all for Detroit. I think you had to, I always say you hit a point where you have to grow up the roster, right? You have to either the players mature themselves or you need to add veterans to help them mature. And then I think where, like you said, Cade Cunningham he's everything right now for them. You need to put real players around him to figure out what is he, right? Because your goal by the end of the Tobias Harris contract is, all right, do we need a better version of Tobias Harris or are we, okay, other guys have grown or Cade Cunningham has rounded out his game in a different way. We don't necessarily need that guy. That's what you're trying to find out. Right now, you need some shooting, spacing. You need a guy who's just going to be there, like you said, every night, do his thing. Now, my thing with Tobias Harris, this goes all the way back to when he was on the Magic. I always said he's the most frustrating 20-point per game guy in the league because he gets there by scoring 15, 5, 20, 0. Like, it's never like 20, 20, 20.
Yeah.
There are times when with the Magic, with the Clippers, with the Sixers, even, his time with the Pistons, it has felt like they were like playing 4-on-5, not in a bad way, but just because you don't feel him up there. There's nights when it's like, is he even playing? And then you look at the box score, it's like, played 30 minutes and he's taking 4 shots. Like that, now the good thing is Tobias Harris has never been the guy who's like, I make $30 million. I need 20 shots a night. Like he's never kind of bullied his way into that. But I think for this team where they're trying to go, what they're trying to be, how they're trying to improve, I think this makes a lot of sense for them just from the standpoint of he really feels the need. You needed to get more of a true 2024 4 on the core with those guys. And that's what Harris is. And he's just going to help the spacing and all the other stuff around Cunningham and Thompson and Ivy, the younger guys that you're trying to grow into more of an on-ball playmaker type roles. He's going to really help with that. And I think that's the important thing. Yeah, who were they bidding against? That's a fair question. Like who else was out there saying, hey, you want $25 million a year? I don't know. But to that point too, like you mentioned, you're still sitting on $10 million in cap space. So what difference does like that's my thing is at that point it's not what else were you gonna do? Like what else was there? Like what does anybody see right now or think by the time we get to the trade deadline they missed out on it? The important thing I'll note for everybody too, you can no longer sit on like $30-40 million of cap space into the season because you have to hit the salary floor by the start of the year. Otherwise, what happens is the NBA puts a cap hold on your books to bring you to the floor. So there's no those days of, hey, we're raise your hand, we'll take every bad contract you have at the trade deadline. Those are pretty much gone for the most part. There'll still be salary dumps, don't get me wrong, but not where it is just, hey, send us a first round pick and a $35 million deal and we're good. Like you can't do that anymore. So I have no real issue that much from them spending on Harris. It was fine to me. It's only 2 years too, so that part's fine. You could quibble a little why is there not team control on that second year, but if realistically, what do we expect the Pistons to be at the end of this year that you needed team control to get off Tobias Harris to go chase free agents or whatever next year's? That's a long way of saying I'm okay with it.
Doesn't that 26 million? I mean, if they really got into play for a big time player, it could come in handy. No,
sure.
Like that money could. And here was the other thing, you talking about Tobias kind of quote unquote disappearing at times. I actually think that could be a positive, right? Like he's not, I thought at times Jeremy Grant was a little bit like, hey, I still want to be the dude here. I'm not ready to give it over to the young bucks. Or Boyan like wanted to be a high usage guy. What if Jaden Ivey's ready to cook on the Tuesday night in Charlotte? You don't want Tobias taking that usage from J.I. or Asar or, you mentioned Ron Holland. So it's in some ways, Omari, I think that could be a positive that Tobias. I know we have other free agents we need to talk about as well, but I thought that was interesting that what could be looked at as a negative for Tobias for a lot of teams may end up being somewhat of a positive for this specific Pistons team.
No doubt. I mean, you mentioned it, this roster, but obviously, Cade's going to be in that 1A role this upcoming season. And they need a 1B. Tobias over the last few years has been more of a third option or even a fourth option some seasons. So, I expect there will be some sort of hierarchy that plays out over the course of the year. Keith, along with that, and you talked about the spacing earlier, but Malik Beasley, career shooter, Tim Hardaway Jr., career shooter, and then they re-signed Fontecchio, obviously, who can shoot the ball as well. Spacing-wise, how much more confident do you feel about this team maybe compared to last year where, you had Bogey, you had Burks, not like you had no shooting, but just that they'll be able to at least adequately space the floor whenever they have Cade out there?
Yeah. Hey, and I'm glad you mentioned the guys from last year. Those guys to me are more Bogdanovich and Burks are more on-ball shooters, meaning they're going to create their own looks. Beasley, Fontecchio, Hardaway, they play off guys. Hardaway spending the time with Luka. It's going to take time to get that chemistry with Cade. But when Hardaway was going good, there were times when it's almost like in football where the quarterback passed to a spot and then you're like, what? And then all of a sudden, the receiver is there. Like, I didn't know he was going to make that read. Hardaway had that chemistry. He knows how to use his kind of spots on the floor and how to get to them and then just show up there and the ball arrives on time. And I think Cade has that passing gene where it is, he'll see the pass and throw it before the guy's eating. He'll pass the guy open, if you will. So I think that's going to be important. Then Beasley's been consistently one of the better shooters, period, in the league. And he can get his own off the dribble too, but he's also really good spotting up. And Fontecchio is terrific in that standpoint as well. So I'm kind of excited about the different kind of spacing that they have. And then along with Harris, who's been a pretty good shooter, or at least he's somebody you have to guard. Like that helps balance out. So I thought the Beasley addition, really solid. I mean, that's, if he super pops and looks really good, it's going to be hard to retain him. But everybody you go into those kind of knowing that, right? That's probably one year kind of thing. You hope you can really get Hardaway in a spot where it's like, all right, at the end of the year, we're feeling pretty good about this. And we can, look at this a little differently because his word right should be enough to re-sign him if you need him. Where Beasley, we'll see, where that one goes. And then Fontecchio, I mean, that's a terrific contract for them. If anything, I wish they would have, got a third or a fourth year out of that one instead of just the two. But it's kind of is what it is. And he is a little bit of an older player having come over to the NBA deeper into his career. But yeah, I thought those three additions were kind of no risk, or not. Fontecchio is not exactly an addition, but those signings were like no risk, I say no cost because I'm not the one writing the check, but no cost because you got to spend money anyway. So I thought those were all pretty good. The Hardaway one, I would have liked to maybe keep Grimes.
I'd say, what was your thought on that process in general? The one caveat, Keith, is Troy traded for Quentin Grimes. Trajan didn't trade for Quentin Grimes.
Sure.
And so, I wonder if there was some, maybe Trajan didn't value it, the injury, was Quentin happy in Detroit, those type of things that we may not know the full story. But in general, what were your thoughts on just that process of that move?
Yeah, and I always own this too, especially with the player who's had injuries. Nobody knows it better than where the team is on what does that look like. And if their read on it is, and Omari, maybe better being around the team every day. But if their read is this knee's always going to be a problem and we don't want to be the team to give him his next contract because of that, I have no issue with that then, because that's where it becomes money not well spent. If you spend money on a guy who's never going to be on the floor or he's going to miss a lot of time, unless you're talking Kawhi, right? Because it's when Kawhi plays, he's incredible. And clearly Grimes isn't there. But just basketball wise, I thought he fit. I thought he played could have played a real role for that team because of, I think 3-and-D's hard because he's not a great defender, but he's a pretty good defender in my mind. And I think he could have grown into a 3-and-D role. Whereas Thompson, who I think they would have been competing for minutes. Thompson, who knows if the 3 part ever comes. The D, we're already there. That's fine. But if the 3 will ever come, and that may have also been part of it too, I think, with the Pistons is, hey, we already have, we're re-signing these other guys. We're going to bring in some vets. We're not going to have enough time to give Grimes minutes and Thompson minutes. And eventually at a point where it sounds awesome to have 12 really good young players you're trying to develop. Well, guess what? You can't. You can't play 12 guys enough minutes to get them all there. So I didn't beat up on him too much. I would have preferred that if they could have kept him. But hey, if this is where it is and you round it out a little bit differently, it's not a huge deal.
PD Max says, I really feel like Keith Smith is low-key a Pistons fan. He doesn't disrespect the team even when they are horrible. Keith and I have talked about this. Like we have, we try to keep things a little more positive. That's the way we do things. You don't always have to be hot takey and all that. You just provide real quality content. And, it's obviously worked for Keith. He's the biggest name in the game right now.
Yeah.
Hey, you're crushing it. I tell you this all the time. Like, it's an honor, truthfully. Like, I get to text Keith Smith anytime I want. Like, I will text Keith and he responds to me. Like, I know I'm like name dropping and like flexing here a little bit. I think that's insane to me. Truly, Keith. Because like when I started out in this, it was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And then now I can just like, Keith, why did this happen? Why did that happen? How does this cap situation? And as the cap gets more and more confusing on top of it. So you're the best. And you're always so open to help things and answer questions and all that. I'm gonna
clip that and send it to my mom because she'll love that. I mean, there you go. I thought she was my biggest fan, but I don't know. Maybe she is. I don't know.
Competition.
Yeah,
I definitely show my daughter, but she's like, whatever, I don't care.
So Ethan asked, we talked about this last time. Who do you think benefits from the spacing most? And so we automatically talk about Cade Cunningham, right? Like that is, but somebody brought up to me, is it actually Jaden Ivey? Does J.I. actually benefit more from being able to get downhill in the space there? So, or is it Asar Thompson who now has more space? Or like, what do you think who benefits the most from this spacing that the Pistons have added this offseason?
Yeah, I think Cade is the easy person to talk about with this, but Cade's already good enough to kind of create his own space or to work in traffic and be okay. Thompson and Ivey as developing on-ball guys, they still need a little bit of that help. Like Ivey, I think one of the things that's really going to help him is if you can't dig in hard off the wing or the corner when he drives, that's just going to open things up for him, whether it is find the pass, because he's not the biggest guy in the world. So he does struggle if a bigger defender comes in. Sometimes you see he's making the right read. He just can't get the ball there. So if it is like the guy needs to step closer, step tighter, it's so funny in the NBA. The biggest thing that I've realized is as good as these guys all are, how much a half a step or a step makes in the NBA. And if the defender is a half or step further away from you, that's so much the better. So I think he really benefits. And then Thompson, to me, now you have opportunities for him to put his head down and get by his guy and get into the paint, get to the rim. Whereas before, teams were like, all right, just collapse on him because who's he kicking it out to? We don't care. I guess probably not going to make it anyway. It doesn't matter. So that's where I think that's going to be really helpful for those guys. Clearly helps Cade Cunningham, and I don't want to discount it, but he's pretty good at getting to his spots anyway. It will help him for sure, but I think it's more what helps Cunningham is it's not the spacing. It's the fact that guys will make shots. Because what I saw out of him last year was when he would get frustrated and he would settle for those bad shots is he could have kicked it out, but it's been 5 clanged jump shots off the rim in a row. Then it becomes, all right, we got to score. I'm going to take the shot myself. I'm going to do it myself. And that's where I think for him, it becomes now it's just that trust of if I make the right read, there will be positive results. And that's huge. That's so underrated in just getting guys to play the right way because they have trust and faith in their teammates to deliver, especially for young players. You can't overstate.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing we've talked about, Omari, is just the rotations now. You can put a Sar on the floor with a Jaden Ivey because you can put 3 other floor spacers with them. You don't have so many non-shooters, especially when your young guys are the non-shooters. At least there's other guys to space the floor. We're going to go a short break. When we come back, I think Omari wants to ask about Paul Reed. That'll kind of finish off the offseason. We can get into some questions, maybe some JB, the offseason as a whole, and all of that.
All right, we're back with segment 3. Coming into the offseason, the Pistons obviously needed a third big, and they claimed Paul Reed off of waivers. He's athletic, he rebounds, he blocks shots, shot even from 3 decent, albeit on very, very low attempts. But he's also a guy that played all 82 games last year, which I think is meaningful given that Duren and Stewart have both missed time in their careers. What's your opinion on Paul Reed, and how do you see him sort of fitting in this hierarchy they have with their other 2 young bigs with Isaiah and Duren?
Yeah, so for me, I never bought into the full Paul Reed hype machine where people it felt like every time he played, Sixers fans were like, here's the second coming of, Joel Embiid right behind him. And now we have 2 versions. It's like, what are we doing? Like, hey, at one point I got really screamed at by Sixers fans when he was a free agent 2 years ago. I didn't have him in my top 50 free agents. Like, you're insane. And then I was like, cool. And he got this weird contract because Danny Ainge was screwing around with Daryl Morey on an offer sheet. All that said, I love him as a waiver claim for the Pistons because he's fine if you just treat him like what he is, which is a good backup big man. Like when it got crazy for me, it was like, there's 2 starting centers on the Sixers and things like that. It's like, no, there's not. Like, he's not that good. I did like last year, like you said, he was only 57 3-pointers that he took, but he did hit at 37%. That's interesting. I'm curious to see what that looks like there. The thing I really like is if you get into lineups with him and Stewart together, it might get a little messy spacing wise, unless one of them really starts to become somebody who you absolutely have to guard more. Its energy is going to be off the charts, right? They're going to be coming in and throwing guys around the gym and, bodying guys in the lane. And that's going to be great because even with the improved shooting, there's still going to be plenty of missed shots. They're going to create second opportunities. They're going to be all over the place. It's funny. I said to someone the other day, maybe I'm dating myself here, but I think you guys will get it. The Bash Brothers from Mighty Ducks 2. That's who they remind me of, right?
Yeah.
Hold on. Omari, have you seen Mighty Ducks?
Back in the day. Yeah, I've seen Mighty Ducks.
And you've seen the second one?
Back in the day, yeah.
And have you
it's
seen
been a while.
Have you seen the third one? There's actually a third one.
I probably haven't seen the third one.
The third one.
That's like
weird.
Yeah,
that's like asking if you've seen Home Alone 3. Like everybody seen the first 2, but who watches Home Alone 3?
I love Home Alone 3.
You love Home Alone 3?
The little kid?
Without Macaulay Culkin? Like the other kid?
I don't care about Macaulay Culkin. Home Alone 3 is
he's like the star of the first two, though. He's the reason why Home Alone is popular. The third, I don't even know who the third kid is. His name was
it doesn't matter. It's still, okay, whatever. All right.
I've never seen Home Alone 3. And I've never seen Mighty Ducks 3.
Can we text Trevor and see if we can get this conversation on the new pod that he's opening up over there?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it fits. It's tangential enough. But yeah. But that's what they remind me of, right? Is potentially the bodying guys, getting the crowd fired up. I can already envision, one where it's like somebody goes in and tips the rebound to the other one. He finishes and there's like a chest bump and the place is going crazy. So again, no cost addition, right? It just costs you some cap space. I think it's really solid. Now you can kind of go in every night knowing, all right, we've kind of got our big man rotation. We feel pretty good about it. I don't know how much they're all going to be able to play together. It really is dependent on somebody has to really be able to play the 4 and step out and shoot it, which I think Stewart probably can. I think he's unscheduled nonsense. Yeah, that's a front office show thing all the time. So, but yeah, I like it for Detroit. I think it's one. And again, it doesn't work out. You're out of it free and clear. You don't even know them all that much.
Okay, let me ask this all-encompassing question with Trajan Langdon. Do you like, in general, the approach that he took to the offseason? Because at the beginning of the offseason, there was some conversation of trade for Brandon Ingram, trade for Zach LaVine, trade for DeJounte Murray, go get a second fiddle, however the Robin to Cade's back, whatever, however you want to say it. They didn't do that. He prioritized veterans that play a lot of games and space the floor, and it seems like is going to try to go upside with his young roster. We talked about the Ron Holland pick. Do you like that in general, or were there some other moves that you think could have been made, or a completely different approach that you would have liked to see?
No, I'm glad. I know this is hard for Pistons fans because it's been forever since they've won, playoff games and been even, in the playoffs. But they could have definitely made moves, and I think those moves were truly there to be made that could have put them in the play-in tournament and maybe even in the playoffs this year. But at what cost? like at the cost of one, you probably would have had to move a couple of the young players in those deals. You would have shortcut the development for some of the other young guys because you would have brought in like Ingram or Levine and they would have the ball a lot. So I think as long as everybody can trust, let's go a couple more years. Like this year, let's show like real improvement. Even if we're still bottom 3 in the East, but we're in more games, win a few more games. Then next year is we're in the race until the trade deadline or whatever. We're really pushing to compete for a play-in tournament spot. By then, you kind of really know, all right, we have a pretty good idea what a lot of this young core is. We've re-signed some of them, some maybe they've moved on from. But then you're really in the spot where now it's time to load up. And that's where I think what's important for the Pistons is as much as I get, there's a sense of just, can we win? Can we be competitive? Can we play games that mean something in March and April? I get it, but it was there. You could have got there this year, but I don't think it would have been the right. I think that would have been a mistake. So I'm all in favor of it. I'll be honest. I was a little surprised because I thought there might have been a mandate from ownership to let's start moving things forward more, especially with some of the more pointed comments coming out of like, hey, we need players, right? We need guys and no more just eating contracts and all that stuff. And they, to be fair, they did not do a ton of eating contracts this summer. They ate a couple, but nothing too crazy, not like it was the prior few years. So I think I think they're okay. And I think what would be really successful for them is we hit like the new year and beyond. If it is, hey, we're still losing games, but we're in most of these games. We're getting really good reps. Anything beyond that is like, whoa, all right, let's go. Like, and that's not even out of reach in the Eastern Conference. I mean, I've been going through it for well over a month now since really roster's kind of sort of locked in. And I'm like, someone has to make the 10th seed in the East. Like somebody has to. And it's like, who even wants to? Like that's because, I mean, Bryce, we've already started talking about it. This draft is loaded. Like who even wants to be the 10th seed in the East? And that's where it's like, all right. And that's where you may get into teams that are, we have protected picks. It's better if we finish a little lower, and that could maybe boost the Pistons. So there's a way we get to the trade deadline and they're in contention for the play-in tournament. Man, talk about you're way ahead of where I thought you could be, but you did it kind of in the right way.
That would be funny just from the standpoint of you would have like Pistons Civil War. Like, do we go for Cooper Flag or do we try to go for the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Hold on. I am putting it is not just Cooper Flag. Give Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Dylan Harper, Nolan Traore, not necessarily for the Pistons, but like at least, listen, I'm kind of intrigued by Common Malawak as well. I'm not saying he's in that same, I know Keith, we'll have this.
I like him, but I've got him way lower.
Yeah. I'm just here. If you end up at the end of the like at 10 and Common Malawak ends up being what I think he is, that's not an awful place to be if you're Detroit, right? To add a floor spacing theoretically big with this crazy size. That's all I'm saying. No, Malawak is not in that top 5. I'm not saying that all, but like there's going to be some other. Have you watched any of the FIBA U18s? This Ben Serif kid from Israel is insane. He is so good. There's a kid, Kasparis, that's going to Illinois. Like it's just, sorry, I got off on a tangent here. Cooper is amazing. VJ Edgecombe, like these dudes can hoop.
Ace Bailey. They all have great names too. And I've said this before, but I'm a big believer in like the name, like Cooper Flag, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe. Like these don't sound like real, like these all sound like stars. Like this is like I'll put that up there with like LeBron and Carmelo.
To that point, man, I said when we were decided we were going to start a family, I was like, if we have a boy, I wanted to name him Max, because Max Smith is like the starting quarterback at USC. Like, I don't care, like 100%. Max Smith is like, that kid's going to be successful in whatever he goes on to do in life. So I'm with you, man. Yeah, give me a good name. Plus, you have like Dylan Harper, Ron Harper's kid, right? Like, so you've got like lineage stuff there. Yeah, I've talked to many scouts that have said the top 5 guys. So Flag, Bailey, Harper, Edgecombe, and Traore. whatever order you have them, that's fine right now. Those 5 guys, I've talked to many NBA scouts and front office folks who said all 5 of them would have been the number 1 pick in this year's draft. Like, without a question in their mind. They all would have been drafted number 1 overall. So the fact that they're all coming next year, I know you flashed up a question there. I would rather, like, this sounds tough. I'd rather win the 13 games and be guaranteed one of the better players, whether it's Cooper Flagg or any one of the other 4. Like, I'm fine with that than just 34 games and missing out on the playoffs is like, well, what did we do this for? That's what. Now, if you're asking me win 13 games and get guaranteed the player or make the playoffs, that gets a little harder, right? Because making the playoffs can be really big for a team. But for me, play competitive basketball into the new year and then see where things are at, right? Maybe it's, all right, the best thing is to trade Malik Beasley because he's had a great season. We can get draft capital or a young player we like or something like that. That's fine. But yeah, man, I am, I'm not telling Pistons fans anything they don't know. Let's be careful with bottoming out because I think we all know it doesn't guarantee you anything when the lottery comes around.
And I know you got something, Omari. The percentage resets to 48% again, too. It doesn't matter. They went 1 to 5 the last 2 years. When you flip the coin, it's heads or tails, essentially 50-50 again. And then real quick, Keith is referencing this question from Derek Brown that says, would you rather see the Pistons win 34 games and just miss out on the playoffs or win 13 games, but you're guaranteed Cooper Flagg? So this is obviously not a realistic question, which is fine, but that is not a guarantee. One other name real quick I want to throw out because, Keith, I know you know this name also. Liam McNeely would be a nice little fit on this Detroit Pistons team as well. So
he's really good.
Liam McNeely is awesome. And so again, this is where I'm right now in August. Hey, if they end up with the 7th, the 8th, 9th pick, no, it's not one of those top 5 guys, but there's some guys that maybe means, Ivy looked really good or Ron really showed something or whatever, Asar. And then now you're just like, hey, let's add another floor spacing wing that can defend and rebound, i.e. Liam McNeely. So Omari, I know you wanted to add something to that conversation.
Yeah, I was just going to bounce off of that. But if the Pistons were to win 34 and make the play, and you probably assume that one of their young guys made some sort of leap, right? Just because Cade can't do it by himself, more than likely. So going off of that, when you look at the rest of this roster outside of Cade, what player intrigues you the most? What player on this roster do you think you'll probably keep tabs on closer than the others outside of Cade next season?
Yeah, Asar Thompson, without a doubt. Like I am one of my true fundamental basketball beliefs is give me an athlete that works really hard and I'll teach him everything else that he needs to know. The shooting, that sometimes it just never comes. If he works hard enough, sure. But what he can already do today defensively, you could have plugged him into any one of the playoff games that was played this year, and he would have been fine defensively. As a rookie, he would have held up because either what he got beat, his athletic skills are so good that he can recover, but he understands the game. He sees angles. You can see that both him and his brother, them being ball handlers and playmakers and being kind of forced into doing that, it actually helps both of them defensively too, because they just see the game differently on that end of the floor. The anticipation stuff is there. I just want to see, can he do more off the dribble? Can he do more playmaking? Is the shot improved? Right. And sometimes it kills me that there's this sense of like, right, because whatever we say, lock him in the gym and make him take 10,000 jump shots a day. Sometimes that works. You know what? Sometimes it doesn't. Some guys just never become good shooters. Like, I don't know why. Like, and I can't tell you how many players I've covered over the years where it is they did work really, really hard at it, and they just couldn't do it. Like, it just never got there from them.
That's a misconception from fans too. They're like, why don't they work on this harder?
Yeah,
these guys work on this stuff every single day.
I thought about this morning. Like, I'm gonna use you two. You two right now, let's say you were the same level of shooters. I actually think Keith's probably a better floor spacer than you, Omari, just straight up. But no, I don't know. But we could put
I'll give it to Keith.
We could put you two in the gym.
Okay.
We put you two in the gym. Sure. Omari's more into the breakdancing, apparently, like that, and canoe. What was it? Kayaking, canoeing,
canoe slalom.
Yeah,
canoe
like
slalom.
The cross, like where it's like the two going against each other. Yeah. Oh my God, that was awesome.
Omari's into all of I talked about your tweets. Omari's been tweeting out like every day something from the Olympics. I'm like, what?
It's funny because I watch all of it, right? Like I watch all the basketball, I watch all the track, I watch all the gymnastics. I never tweet about those things, but then I see breakdancing or canoe slalom, and I'm just like, this is a whole new thing. Like I think
breakdancing was funny because Omari's like, oh, she's gonna win. She's got the do-rag on, just like me. Like apparently she was wearing the same do-rag.
This thing kind of do-rag, like it was just. She was from Lithuania or something. Like it was just this whole combination I'd never seen before. Like I was flabbergasted. Like it was crazy.
My point was we could put you guys in the gym and for whatever reason, genetics or an ability to learn, the mental, emotional, whatever, you guys, we could do the exact same training and you wouldn't progress at the same rate. And I think as you said, Omari, that's a huge misconception with some of this stuff.
Some people just don't have it. Like that's just how it goes.
Yeah. Now, my belief, and this is something I've now grown deeper. I've been for years, I have believed if you're a non-shooter at point guard, you better literally be elite at everything else, or your cap is a backup. Like you're never going to be better than if you are. But now I've pushed that too. That's out to wings now too. You better be elite at other stuff. And I think Thompson is. I think we're already really close. Maybe by the end of this year, but by the end of his third season, I think we're going to be talking about him as an elite defender because I can see it. It's already there. Like all those tools are there. Then it's going to be, all right, are you an elite defender who can finish on the break and get out and run? But we have to kind of play you like a 5 almost on offense because we're doing some stuff. But then that's when you get really creative, right? If you can get a floor spacer at the 5, well, play him at the nail, run stuff through him that way where he can use his passing ability. You could do a lot of different stuff. And that's so I don't know, we took a journey to get here, but he's easily the player I am most excited to monitor this season on this team. Well, more so than even Holland or any of the other guys, just because I can't wait to see what he becomes.
No, that's why I love having you on, Keith, because when you repeat guests, you get into just like you can flow and the conversation is much better. So, Omari, I know you have another question for Keith. I got one from the comments I want to ask, and then we'll get everybody out of here.
Yeah, for sure. So, looking at Ivy and Duran, like long term, which guy needs to click? Like long term, what's more important to click? Is it Ivy becoming that guy who can run the offense with Cade sitting and maybe develops to a good defender, a good shooter, could just kind of play off of Cade, or is it Duran with the rim protection and the passing and everything else? Which guy needs to make that leap, more importantly, for the Pistons to get to that level?
Yeah, that's a great question. I say this is great radio podcasting. Me sitting here stumbling and thinking about it. In my head, I want to say Ivy, just because I think on-ball players are more important than not on-ball players. But I think you already have the guy in that in Cade Cunningham. So I'm going to go with Duran. And it's funny because I said this at one point where I said I thought he showed real strides defensively last year, and I got murdered by Pistons fans on Twitter that were like, what in the world did you see? And real strides was like, he went from awful to, all right, he's just bad now. Like, and those are real strides. Like it takes steps, and in young bigs, either they come in and they're so instinctual that they're doing everything off instinct day one, and it looks great, or it just takes them a while to figure it out and learn how to play. So for me, that's where I was with him. I was not at a spot where it was funny because I finally was like, and it was funny because then a couple of the Pistons fans who are like, I've gotten to know a little bit through social media over the years were like, he didn't say he was good. He just said he was better than a couple years ago. So for me, it's Duran because I think you already have the primary on-ball playmaker. And the reason I hesitate is if Duran doesn't get there, you can kind of always go get a center, right? There's always somebody you can go get to kind of plug in there and be okay. But that's my only hesitation because you can never have enough ball handling, playmaking, shooting. So that's where I do think Ivy's important. So I would say it's both, but if I'm going to have to pick one, I'm going to pick Duran.
Oh, I think it does speak to just the lack of rim protection and kind of defense overall currently on this roster. So I want to get out with one final question real quick. Chuck asks, YouTube never sends notices for your streams. Thanks for sending a notice out on Twitter. I will talk to Robin about why that's not happening on YouTube. Ethan, you asked a question about the Pistons offense. We're going to save that for our mailbag episode whenever that comes up in the next few weeks. So we'll finish off with this from Matthew Harrison. Keith, how's your back? I know you hurt that the other day a little bit, tweaked it a little bit the other day, or are you off the injury report?
Yeah, for the most part, I'm about where I need to be. I'm doing much better. Yeah, we didn't get the hurricane. Thankfully, did not hit us, but it really brought through it was a pretty big storm, and it brought through some really crazy weather for us Sunday and the Monday. And I was just out picking stuff up, and it's like I need these constant reminders. You're not 25 anymore. Like it's the universe's way of saying like, settle down here. Like cut that branch in half instead of key-manning it over the curb yourself. Tough guy. So that was all it was. And I just tweaked it. It wasn't like I was like lifting a 300-pound log or anything. It was just, you bend and when you get old, man, it sucks. You bend and twist the wrong way, and next thing you know, you're on the couch for a few days. But I had to spend a few days on the couch when there's the Olympics on. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's been awesome having all of the sporting events to watch, to turn on every day during this time of the year. And now we're right into football. I don't know if the Lions have played a preseason game yet. I know
they played, they played Thursday.
Okay, and then the Chiefs play their first preseason game tonight. So we're getting right into NFL season, and then NBA will be here before we know it. Keith, thank you so much. We will definitely have you back on before the season. Maybe we can talk about what the Pistons could do with the cap space, the roster spot, if it's still available, and where this team is looking at, moving forward. But that's all for today. Again, if you watch live, please subscribe, like, leave a rating, review, all of those things, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Keith, before we get out of here, thank you so much. And let everybody know, because I know I kind of gave Keith some love earlier, but truly, if you want to get to know the game or you want understanding of the cap space and contracts, Keith is the guy and Spot Track is the place. So please push all that stuff out so all of our listeners know where to go.
Yeah, you can find most of my written work over on spottrack.com. I'm in the middle. We took this week off because I had stuff going on, and then our other guy, he had stuff going on. Good time in the summer to get some downtime in. But we're in the middle of doing a summer league review. And what I'm doing over there is, and Bryce joined me for a show on Front Office Show, which we'll talk about in a second, but just covering every single rostered player in summer league. Every guy who played is either signed to a standard deal, a two-way deal, camp deal, or maybe somebody who may show up at some point. Yeah, I wrote about all of them. I've covered the Central Division. So Pistons fans, my thoughts on all the Pistons guys are out there. And I've also covered the Pacific Division. We'll have the other 4 divisions coming here over the next few weeks. So you can find that. And then we'll get into stuff about next year. Like, what does spending power look like a year from now? Where are we going with this, with the cap rising and all that stuff? I think people are going to be a little surprised. There's a ton of cap space out there next summer. It's a little bit different. Teams have locked into a lot of long-term money. And then if you like the news, notes, rumors, trades, transactions, all that stuff, NBA Front Office Show, Bryce mentioned a couple of times, Trevor Lane and I do that. We're in our summertime, so we're like 3 or 4 episodes a week. Every Friday is a live show. We call it Front Office Friday. We have a lot of fun. It's really the people who watch show. It's your show to ask questions and all that. We'll get into topics if we need to. I got a little cranky and vented about Jason Tatum not playing yesterday on that Front Office Friday, but that was not a regular thing. We don't do that normally. It's a lot more lighthearted, fun show, but it was timely, and I needed to say my piece. But yeah, but we have a lot of fun over there. And then the basketball bulletin, I need to shout that out. Sorry, I just and I actually wrote for the basketball bulletin the other day. I wrote up some thoughts on the Christmas games, and what we're going to get out of those 5 games. We've got some stuff coming there that we're trying to figure out the best way for Trevor, myself, and Bryce, who's joined us over there, really carried content quite a bit there with draft stuff. The best way to use that outlet and get through it. So we're discussing that. So even more to come over there. Oh, and then people are asking,
what's up?
Team USA, man. Yeah, Team USA, of course, right? Come on now. Both it is, women's soccer team and the men's basketball team. Let's go.
Women's basketball team.
Yeah. And I think that's tomorrow, right?
Yeah, tomorrow.
That's tomorrow.
I'm excited. I like the way it played out with Wemby playing for France in Paris against Team USA. Like this will be pretty cool. And he got very emotional in their semifinal win. Like I haven't seen Wemby get like crazy, emotional. And he really was excited after they made that semifinal win over Germany. So you can see how much it means to these guys.
Good. Now let's let him stay home and cry after we take it. Let's go.
Keith, it's always a pleasure having you on. Definitely check out Keith's work at Spot Rack and everywhere else. He's
Spotrack. Me and Keith, me and Wes got hooked on Twitter for saying it wrong. Hooked.
Spotrack. You know, like I've been saying Spot Rack for so long now.
So now you're splitting the difference. It's Spot Track.
Spot Track.
Okay.
So say it like Spot and Track, but all smushed together. Spot Track.
Spot Track. Find Keith on Spot Track. Pronounce it more correctly than me and Bryce did just now.
Spell Keith, it right. That's all I care about.
Spell correctly. Right. Keith, always such a pleasure having you on. We'll definitely do it again soon. And I'll go ahead and close this out. So big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan. Big thanks to our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols. And shout out to Wes Davenport, as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.